Hello, loves. Today I have compiled quite a few good stories. Let's get started. Story: My Little Love Story While in Europe. Hey everyone, hope everyone's a good day today. I just wanted to share my little love story that happened on my recent holiday trip. So I booked a 16-day trip in Europe across 9 countries in early December through Contiki. I went into the trip hoping to meet a lot of new people and see/experience a lot of things in Europe, and sure enough, I experienced and met a lot of interesting and friendly people that I spent 16 days traveling with. I met this wonderful girl, let's call her Grace, on the first day of the trip, and we sat next to each other on the bus. As we talked and talked throughout the bus trip, I became very fond of her and would spend the next few days of the trip with her. Not exclusively but part of a small group. Days went by and I had started to develop feelings for her. Now I've never been in a relationship before, and I'd say I'm quite inexperienced with the whole flirting game, because my way of dealing with these kind of feelings is to just sit on them or just flat out ignore them. However, I've been on a bit of a spiritual journey this year with regards to self-love and self-discovery, so I thought, what the hell, I'll shoot my shot, as I probably have a very low chance of seeing her again after the trip finishes, as we all go our separate ways. So if it happens, it happens. Grace had her birthday coming up soon and we'd be in Rome together to celebrate it, so I decided I'll buy her a thoughtful gift and tell her about my feelings for her, but at this point I didn't know what to get her. About 4 days before we got to Rome, we were in Prague and I was visiting/seeing the infamous Charles Bridge with Grace and a bunch of other people. While we were there, Grace kept going on about how the Spider-Man Far From Home had a scene on this bridge featuring Tom Holland and Zendaya. I'm a vivid Spider-Man fan, so I knew instantly what scene she was talking about. It was the scene where Tom takes Zendaya out for a walk on the bridge and then tries to give her a gift and confess his feelings for her. This was my light bulb moment. I knew what I wanted to do now. We were going to be in Venice in a couple days, and I know in the movie Tom Holland buys a black dahlia flower necklace for Zendaya. So I thought I'd try to kinda replicate that and try to buy the same necklace for Grace. So a couple days go by and we end up in Venice. At this point I'm so excited because I've never done something like this for anyone before, and for once in my life I'm actually trying to do something about my feelings for someone. Anyways, straight after the tour of Venice in gondolas, I head out on my search for the necklace on my own. I went into every glass shop I could find as I was walking around the streets of Venice, but I couldn't find exactly what I was looking for. Hours go by, and it was soon time to leave the city of Venice, yet I couldn't find anything that I was looking for, but thankfully half an hour before we were due to get in the ferry and leave Venice, I found a shop that had a beautiful necklace that had a black flower as the central piece, and I knew as soon as I saw it that it was the one. It wasn't exactly like the one in the movie, but it looked similar enough so that she'd know where it was from and the meaning behind it. So I left Venice feeling accomplished. A day later we're in Rome. Finally the day had come. I was very excited but also quite nervous, as this was in the realm of the unknown for me. I mustered up the courage to ask her to see her alone. We met in the lobby and I suggested that we go for a walk outside. So we went on a walk. I asked how her day was going and what she got up to today, as we had a free day in Rome. Soon after that conversation I told her that I got her a birthday gift and promptly handed her the wrapped box with the necklace. As she opened it, she realized what the necklace was and where it was from almost immediately. She stopped walking and asked, "Is this a black dahlia necklace?" And I replied, "Yes." She opened up her arms and asked me for a big hug. It was one of the best hugs I've ever received, and then I told her about my feelings for her. She told me she kinda knew already from other people. I told a few other people on the trip, but she wasn't really looking for anyone at this point, as she had a really bad break-up earlier in the year. She had also started to distance herself from me prior to this day, but I didn't really try to think of it much. Anyways, I understood her perspective on the matter and thanked her for her honesty. On the way back to the hotel, she told me she felt bad for saying no, and I told her that she shouldn't feel bad about being completely honest with me, it's for the betterment of both of us. We then proceeded to distance ourselves a bit from each other for the rest of the trip to give each other a bit of space. I didn't let this rejection ruin the rest of the trip. In my mind, I wore it like a badge of honor. I'm so proud of myself that I did something like this for someone special even though it didn't work out in the end. Now I feel like telling every one of my friends and the whole world about this, so here I am. Everyone now and then I'd watch the Venice and Prague scene from the movie to feel the butterflies again because I went out and did something very similar to the movie. Thanks for reading all this if you got to the end. I appreciate you. Story, Love Finds a Way. My 35F relationship with my husband, 28M, shouldn't work, but it does. We've been together for 5 years, married for 2. We met at a pub. My ex and I divorced, and we'd been split for just about a year at that point. I had been with my ex for 3 years, we'd dated for 2 years and were married for 1 year. Shortly after we got married, he started acting really controlling. I was in love, so I didn't see it at first. He was always gaslighting me, criticizing me, he was always micromanaging me. The biggest thing was he always looked through my phone. When we split, my ex kept trying to contact me. I blocked his number and his Instagram, but he kept making fake accounts and messaging me. When he figured out I wasn't going to respond, he stopped for a bit. He started occasionally sending nasty messages. Anyway, I was sitting at the bar and my husband was sitting a couple seats away from me. I had a rough couple days and my ex messaged me. It was so hurtful, and that coupled with how the last couple of days had gone, I started crying. My husband noticed and asked if I was all right. We started talking and he let me vent. We traded numbers and we met up a bit over the next couple months. We dated. It was essentially just us meeting for dinner once every couple weeks. We met at my place once and I told him about how I was finding it hard to trust people. Then he opened up about his parents. I don't want to air his issues out on here. All I can say is they were really abusive. Him telling me that gave me a new perspective about him. My parents were abusive too, not as bad as his, but still. It's something we connected about. We still continued to meet up, and every time I felt closer to him until I eventually asked him out on an actual date. We dated for 3 years until he proposed. He's an awesome partner. He's the complete opposite of my ex. Our relationship isn't perfect, none are, but he listens to me and we talk things out when we disagree. He said he doesn't want kids because he doesn't want to be like his parents, and I feel the same. I feel like our relationship shouldn't work because of our age gap, but we're still going strong 5 years later. Story, New Year's Eve ruined twice. It was New Year's Eve. I was alone and lonely. It had been 3 months since I had not talked to my boyfriend. I missed him, but I knew I was helping him to come back to his senses. You see, Jude was slowly turning into an alcoholic and had already drained his money. He owed money from most of our friends. 3 months prior, he had a temporary job that paid him well. He paid some of his department and asked me to keep his card so he doesn't feel the urge to go drink, since he was planning to use the rest of the money to build up his career and open a business. One evening, we were invited in a party that was to happen in a club. I told him we should not go because I was worried that he would be too generous and drain his account. This had happened before. He insisted on going and I let him go alone but kept his card. It didn't take long until he came back in the middle of the night, drunk as a skunk. I need my card, but I thought you'd. What's the name on the card, yours or mine? It's my card, my money, my rights. Look, honey, you're not well right now. Why won't you come and rest and we can talk tomorrow? I'm not drunk and I'm not stupid. Give me my card. He was starting to yell and I didn't want to bother my roommate, so I handed him his card but asked him not to bother calling me or come to see me again until he sobered up. The next morning, I was embarrassed to hear someone saying that at the end of the night Jude was walking on all four. I pictured that image in my head, my very tall, dark, and handsome boyfriend crawling because he couldn't stand. Alcohol had crippled him. This is not the life I wanted with him. My heart sank on that thought and I felt horrible for not being able to help him. I sent him a text giving him two options. Either end our relationship for good or take 6 months apart so he can think about what he wants in life, seek help, and sober up. 3 months had gone by and my heart was aching for him. Every day was a test for me. I was tempted to go see him or at least call or text, but I knew one move from my part would ruin any progress he had made, if any at all. Jude and I grew up in a small town, and most of our friends were from there. We moved to the city for studies and lived in the same neighborhood. We were those cousin-like kind of friends. We cared for each other so much that everyone in the group seemed to be worried about Jude. We would have parties in our apartments, or go out, but since Jude had been not himself, they had kind of singled us out until that New Year's Eve. Hey, are you home? One of our friends who was a doctor calls me. Yeah, what's up? I was wondering if you can come here for a moment if you're free. Finally, an invitation for New Year's Eve. I thought, okay, I'll be there. Upon entering, instead of Dr. Chris, I find Dr. Dan, his friend, sitting alone. Hey, how are you? Is Chris in? I said as I pour a glass of juice. No, he just left. He got paged at the hospital. Oh, I will call him after then, I said, trying to leave. No, have a sit, I need to talk to you about something. I sit down confused, but ready to listen. Dan looked serious and restless that my thoughts jumped to Jude. Was he okay? I owe you something and I'm not going to beat around the bush. Do you know your HIV status? Okay. What is this about? Is this dude serious? A million thoughts were racing in my mind. I wanted to curse but I never do so, but seriously, does he think I can? No, that's not why he asked this question, and yeah, he did owe me, but seriously, no one asks about HIV status to a person they're not looking forward to. I'm sorry, I don't mean. No, that's not my intentions. He said as if he was reading my mind. I just want to give you clarity on something. You have to trust me on this. If you don't know your status yet, I have a testing kit with me here. Still confused, my guts tell me to let him test me. I stretch my head toward him without saying a word. My brain was too frozen to even feel the sting of the needle. But for some reason, I just left before the results. I went for a walk to clear my head, but instead the further I walked the heavier my head felt. I could hear my phone ringing, but I knew it was Dan and I couldn't pick it up. Somehow my walk ended up in Chris's home. Dan was still there and Chris was back. They looked happy and when they saw me, they asked to be happy and celebrate because my HIV status came out negative. Now, I'd never been confused. Why? These people knew me from my childhood and they thought I had HIV? I felt pissed, but before I could leave, they sat me down and explained. We have known for a long time, but we couldn't tell you. Jude's status are positive and he told me that you don't know. I disclosed this to Dan because Jude had put me in a very difficult position and I have not been sleeping. I couldn't process any of that. I was shaking and sweating, but I was also afraid to leave. Dan excused himself and left. Dan was trying to help me understand, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. I told him that I was afraid to sleep on my own, and he said I could stay there for the night. He took the couch and I took the bedroom. I didn't sleep. I wanted to call Jude, but I couldn't, and still now I wish I did. You see, in the morning, someone was knocking on the door and for a moment I thought I was dreaming hearing Jude's voice. I woke up and went in the living room to confirm. It was not a dream. Is it okay if I wait for her here? He was asking Chris as I entered the living room. Story: my ex ruined my relationship, and I want to warn his new girl. My ex, whom I'll call James, and I broke up last June 21st, 2023. I fell out of love, and James told me to split up. I didn't know what to do that time because I begged for him to rethink his decision, and maybe if we kept the communication, it would turn out great, or the sparks will come back. He insisted and we split up. A week after, James started hard launching a girl in his social medias. I don't really care because I've already fell out of love, but it's like he's been playing with me. A month passed and he contacted me, begging to get back together. Even asked for his friends to chat me to get back together with him. I didn't, of course. August of 2023, I thought James finally learned his lesson and I got together with an old fling, whom I'll call S, and I only got together until September of 2023 because James was sneakily telling S about everything I've said about him in the past. For context, S is like a balance of light and dark. When we were together in middle school, S and I would constantly fight. He would randomly ask me how to court a girl knowing damn well I liked him. Back to the story, I did say some horrible things about S to James, but I never knew that he would screenshot the messages and send it to S. I was shocked and also disappointed. I apologized to S, but he insisted of splitting up. James made up stories of how S is a cheater, and every guy I point would have a cheating background. Before breakup, I gave James a raw amethyst. Now that we broke up, I've been asked him to give it back for months. And even after we broke up and lost contact, he still didn't give it back to me. It was a raw amethyst that I entrusted to him, but since we split up, I want it back, it's valuable. He's not responding to my messages anymore and acts like I don't exist. Now, James is courting a girl, whom I'll call K. K is a very nice person and I don't want her to be with someone like James. K, if you're seeing this, he's told me in the past that you're not his type, and that he doesn't want to be involved with you. All I'm asking is for you is to run, don't let him try and court you. He's the worst. James once made sexual comments about me to his friend, and I was thankful that his friend didn't tolerate James' behavior. James also told that same friend that I have been depressed and would constantly H4RM myself, which is true, but he was making jokes about me and showing how insensitive he was towards my feelings and my S31FH4RM. He's a liar and someone you should not trust. Never let a guy like him come close to you. And he also lied about his size. He said he's 6-inch and when I saw it, it was smaller than my marker. Disappointing. It won't reach far, K, don't bother. Also, I found out from a friend that he's been telling everyone about our intimacy, which he promised to never let anyone know. K, you deserve better. Story: my wife said she loves me and her ex-boyfriend. To give context, I am 30 years old and have been married for 2 years to my wife Jane, the love of my life. I am a pediatrician and earn a good salary, so my wife doesn't have to work. She and I have always been very close. We met through a mutual friend. It was quick, but even so, there was a very strong connection. I have always been somewhat shy and reserved, while she, on the other hand, is very sociable and likes to party. I have never had a problem with this since we have always had a very good relationship based on trust. A couple of months ago, I came home late at night after a long day at work. I was heading towards the bedroom when I saw Jane sitting on the bed, looking at her cell phone and laughing. I approached her, and she quickly turned off her phone, using the excuse that she was just talking to her sister. I believed her since I had a lot of trust in her. While we continued our conversation, she brought up the topic of Scott, her ex-boyfriend. I didn't have a problem with him since they had remained friends, and I liked him. She told me he was in town and that they were going to meet up the next day. I trusted her and didn't see it as something bad, so we left it at that. The next day, when I came back from work, also late, I entered my house and saw them sitting on the couch, chatting cheerfully. I couldn't help but feel a bit annoyed, but I tried to ignore it. I approached them and noticed how Scott got a bit nervous, and my wife reassured him. She told me she had invited him over to show him the house, and I didn't think much of it. We chatted, the three of us, and everything seemed normal, or so I thought. Things changed a week later. My wife told me that Scott would be staying for an entire month for work since he lived about 3 hours away from our city. While I was at my office, I received several messages from my younger sister, who is a 21-year-old girl close to my wife. She told me she had seen Jane and Scott at some kind of party together, kissing. She then sent me a photo taken from a distance where you could indeed see them kissing. I couldn't believe it. I was at work and wanted to die. I never would have imagined that my wife, whom I love so much, was with that man. I felt devastated. After finishing my workday, I returned home as usual, feeling sad. I entered and saw my wife. She greeted me with a smile as she usually did. I sat down next to her and told her what I had found out. At first, she denied it, but then with a sad look, she admitted it. She confessed that she still had feelings for her ex-partner, but that she also loved me very much. She said her heart was torn between Scott and me. She didn't want to leave the life we had built, but at the same time wanted to be with Scott. I felt terribly bad. I don't have the words to describe how I felt when she told me that. The woman I thought I would grow old with and loved me as much as I loved her was also in love with her ex. After that, without any shame, she suggested opening our marriage. I love her with all my soul, and it hurt me a lot that she said that. After arguing for a few minutes, I told her I needed time to clear my thoughts. She, with a sad look, told me to take all the time I needed but that she would wait for me. She then took her things and left. I cried for several hours. I had never felt so sad in my life. Jane, the woman of my life, loved another man. A month has passed since she left. I am not good at expressing myself with people and find it easier to write what I feel. I thought about posting my feelings here on Reddit to get various opinions since I still love Jane and what I want most is to have her back. But it still hurts me a lot that she wants to open our relationship. I don't know what to do or who to turn to. I went to therapy, but I can't find any comfort or solution. Please tell me what to do. I don't know if I was expressive enough in this text, but I still want some advice from any of you. I will give updates. A story about my boyfriend. I don't know why, but I decided to share this story here. Lately, I haven't felt very loved by my boyfriend. He has a hard time showing love, but especially he hasn't done it in the past month or so. But this story is just a highlight in our relationship, helping me keep trying. My boyfriend's birthday is in May, and his cousin's birthday is the day before. They're one day apart and very close. He would constantly tell me stories about how his family and all relatives would have a blast on his cousin's birthday and always forget about his. How his cousin would always get more attention and more presents. He half-jokingly told me that he usually gets a book or a small thing for his birthday and that his family doesn't give him anything more. This made me feel really bad, but I thought maybe this year it will be different for him. He is such a nice boy, I couldn't imagine his family not being that nice to a literally perfect son. We call each other every day, and the night of his birthday we called too. It was about 11 p.m. We talked for quite a bit, and as it was 20 minutes before the clock strikes midnight on his birthday, he told me he'll go find something to eat in the kitchen and call me back soon. I was fine with that and waited. Once it was exactly 12 o'clock, I wrote him a big happy birthday paragraph of how grateful I am for him and just wishing him stuff and telling him I'll see him during the day. He read the message almost immediately but didn't reply for the next 10 minutes. I figured he was with his family congratulating him and stuff, so I just sat there patiently for him to answer and call back. Around 10 minutes later, he calls me. I hear his voice being happy, but he is also sobbing a bit. I was confused. When I asked what happened, he told me sorry for not answering immediately after reading my message. When he went out to the kitchen to eat, he got yelled at by his dad for no reason, just being a little too chirpy in the middle of the night. His dad then went to sleep, forgetting about his birthday. His dad is usually really strict to him. He abuses him mentally and sometimes even physically, but my boyfriend never goes into detail on that. He still loves his dad very much. He then told me that I am the only one who remembered. His entire family, parents and 2 siblings, forgot it was his birthday and simply went to bed. He was so heartbroken by that, but so extremely happy that I congratulated him. I had so many emotions flowing out of me, hearing him thank me but crying at the same time from the pain he's experiencing made me cry too. We talked and cried for several hours that night, me probably crying even harder than him. I never wanted to see my boy so hurt again. I started thinking about his gift weeks in advance, since the moment he told me about his previous gifts. I wanted to give him something special. Initially, he asked me to not get him anything at all, or a ruler at most, day before his birthday, and went shopping and made him a box of things. That box included his first ever wallet, matching couples bracelets, a deck of cards with reasons of why I love him written on every single one, some of his favorite candy, a custom t-shirt I made with my own hands and lips, a love letter and some roses inside. I believe in giving men flowers, although he's never given me any before and still hasn't. I just like doing it, he deserved it. I also included the ruler he asked for. The next day when I saw him and surprised him with the box, he hugged me and teared up a bit. He said it was the best gift he's ever received. I was so glad he liked it. We then went to dinner and later met up with his cousins. After that, the same day, he showed my quite personal present to his relatives and entire family. He said all of them were amazed and I felt very flattered. I spent the whole day with him. I hope I made that day unforgettable for him and that nobody forgets his birthday ever again. Story: It's a love story. The following is the story of how me, 29M, and my wife, 30F, met and married. Like many other people, my freshman year of college was a roller coaster of emotions. Between adapting to a new life and schedule, trying to make new friends, and the unexpected death of my father. Things were changing fast for me, and I was struggling to be my normal, extroverted, happy self. I became involved with a ministry in college, and this helped me find like-minded people who I could not only laugh with, but also have the ability to openly talk about my struggles. My wife was also involved in this same ministry. Over time we would have discussions, but nothing too in-depth or serious. We were friendly to each other, but never anything more than that. Flash forward 2 years and we begin to hang out more and more because of a reason I'll touch on later, and we became really great friends. This would not last long, sadly, as my wife was about to travel the world for the next 2 years doing ministry work in third world countries. When I say doing ministry work, I do not mean she was hanging at resorts 6 days a week and visiting an orphanage for an hour or so. She was truly in the trenches, spending her years in remote villages where they don't have access to electricity or running water. While she was on this trip, she didn't have the ability to talk often, but whenever given the chance, I would talk to her about her stories, and this is where I began to truly fall in love with her. There was only one small problem. See, the reason we began to hang out more and more prior to her leaving was because she began dating a close friend of mine. While she was away on this mission trip, my friend became getting extremely close with another girl. They would hang out regularly one-on-one, openly cuddle each other around others, but according to my friend, nothing more than that. I spoke with my friend about this relationship and how he was emotionally cheating, but he never listened or paid any attention. I felt it wasn't my place to tell my wife about this, because I believed my feelings that I was developing for my herb scared me from being unbiased. After years away, my wife finally returns home. Within a month of being home, my wife's friends told her about the relationship between my friend and this other girl. My wife was aware that they were friends, but she was not aware to the extent of how close they truly were. This led my wife to immediately breaking up with my friend. Now, you're probably thinking to yourselves, wow, this is great news for OP. You have to remember, the reason we became close was because she was dating a friend. Also, as my wife returned from her mission trip, I had freshly graduated college and moved 3 hours away, back to my hometown, to begin a career. I also believed in my mind that my wife was only friends with me because of the relationship she had with my friend. Nevertheless, occasionally I would travel to the college town and meet up with some college friends. When doing this, I would ask them how my wife was doing. They would always keep me updated, and eventually a mutual friend tells my wife that I have been asking how she was. This sparks our friendship as she begins texting me, but still, I lived 3 hours away, so I had no intention of beginning a relationship with her, but it was still nice to be friends again. My wife, being her caring self, began fostering a 2-month-old girl about a year after coming back from her mission trip. She did this while single and working a full-time job. Years pass and I am extremely displeased living in my hometown. See, my father was a small-town hero type of guy. Very well known and very loved. I worked hard to bring positive change in my community, but I felt every action I did I was always compared to my dad. People never meant to offend me by comparing me to my father, but I always felt like if I stayed there I was going to be living in his shadow. I wanted to forge my own legacy. One day I interviewed for a job in the town I went to college in. Somehow, I get hired. Over the summer I move back and immediately I am excited for a multitude of reasons. Soon after moving back, my wife and I begin spending a lot of time together. The 2-month-old girl is now 3 years old, and my wife and I do the silly thing and get married within 3 months of me moving. This became the greatest decision of my life. Since getting married, my wife and I have adopted the girl, made a few kids of our own, bought a house, and are truly living the fairy tale life. We've been married for several years and life couldn't be better. I tell this story because I want others to know you never know who the love of your life is. It could be a stranger, a friend, or a friend's girlfriend. This world is too short and crazy. If you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the read. This is my first time ever really making a Reddit post. Story, my love story that cannot be completed. It all began, maybe, 4 years ago. I've started noticing him in the hallways. But it wasn't something specific, I just really liked his looks. Then, 3 years ago happened something that I didn't expect at all. We started chatting through Telegram. To be honest, at that time I was a shy person, and moreover, I wasn't sure about my sexuality. We were just playing Genshin and messaging, nothing much. I still don't know what's gotten into me, but I offered to go out for a picnic in the city center. It was lovely, I opened up to him, we had a really deep conversation. We kept this up for a long time, and something changed after our visit to the cinema. I followed him to his house, and in the end he kissed me on the cheek. It was the first time ever when a guy did something that's special in my life. We were both nervous, and that's totally fine, I get it. Then, someday we went to his house, I met his mom and dad, they were great and welcoming. We went to his room, where our first kiss happened. That was unexpected, he caught me off guard, but I enjoyed it. The upcoming event was his birthday. LMAO, I remember how I was planning all those gifts and stuff. And the most precious thing was that he really liked them. After the celebration with his friends, he offered me to stay for a sleepover because it was too late outside. I was never on a sleepover before, and I was even afraid to ask her. But I did it. I called her and asked, and she answered yes. We spent the night together. Nothing much happened, only a bit corny stuff. In a few days after that we started dating, I was on a cloud nine. We went out on a few days a month, and it felt amazing, really. There were some issues from my side due to traumas and being scared of abandonment. However, at some point he proved that he won't do such thing. But I wasn't wrong. In a week he sent me video messages where he, while crying, said how sorry he was, and that we need to end this, and how scared he was about his parents finding out. I knew something was off, but I didn't want to push him. Somehow, I overcome my own problems just to understand his problems. I thought it was the end. In a month, in my country the war had started, and he was forced to move to another country. I don't know why, but we kept talking. I didn't what the point was of this chat. Then, we kinda stopped talking to each other, just maybe sent some TikToks, and that's all. In a few months he sent me a TikTok, followed with his crying video message. Of course, I got sad. I tried to comfort him, and I succeeded. After some time, he told me the real reason why we broke up. His sister found out, and told him to do this, or else she would have told his parents and his peaceful life would have been destroyed. All that time I thought that the breakup thing was my fault, but it wasn't. And there he was, offering our relationship back, but this time on distance. I loved him, that was the only reason why I agreed. It sucked. We had our relationship like for 2 months, and we were getting nowhere. He ended everything. I said to him that if he would ever again consider going back to me, he better be ready for it and he should have serious intentions. Half a year passed by, and here was summer. I was in a relationship with other guy. I was kind of happy. One night, I had a dream with my partner and my ex at that time. I was walking into the room, where my birthday party was held with my partner holding my hand. And there he was, saying miss me? I woke up like from the nightmare. And the next day he sent me a TikTok at 4 a.m. So you would understand, no contact for 6 months, and then a TikTok? This TikTok meant a lot to me, it broke me into pieces. You know that movie, Inside Out? And that core memory stuff? The TikTok said that I will always be there. Here I was, crying in my bed in the morning. I'm a tough guy, thanks to my parents, I'm not used to cry. But I was desperate, I was in a relationship. And I was still in love with my ex. For 3 days I was suffering, not able to tell any of my friends because it felt wrong. In a few days I broke down in front of my partner and told him the truth. The thing is that sometimes I become crazy and obsessed with some kind of idea. You are going to understand it really soon. Okay, it took me a week to break up with the current partner, but I told him the truth. Then, I contacted my ex. I was curious about how he was doing. Well, through the chat I could see that he was glad about it. Later he told me that he was thinking about texting me. So, it was mutual. Long story short, my crazy idea was to move for studying in the same country where he lives. When I told him about it, at first he was shocked, then he was helping me with every step, and offered to live with him. My parents supported that idea, they didn't know, and I haven't told them yet. So, yes, basically, in 2 months I moved in. We had our awaited conversation. But the result wasn't amusing. So, he told me about his sex adventures through Grindr here. And also he told me that he cheated on me while we were distantly dating. Again, he was apologizing. At that moment I forgave him, because I didn't feel like that mattered. I didn't feel like dating when he cheated. Then he threw a bomb at me, and said that he doesn't want to date for now. He wanted to, but changed his mind a few days ago. I was like, away. I was really disappointed. I was stuck with him. He was close and at the same time far away. I asked him, "Are you sure?" He answered that he was. I asked him to give me guarantees that he wouldn't ever want to have a relationship with me. He said that he couldn't do it. So yes, I was left with nothing, again. Now, what's the main issue? I live with him every day of my life. It would be okay if we weren't close. But right now it is a common thing for him to lay on my knees, to fall asleep on them, to lay on my shoulder, to watch serials together, to go to the cinema together, to go to a party together, to travel together and to make plans for the future together. In the meantime, he still goes out on hookups through Grindr. And he's proud about it. I worry about my mental state and his. By the way, it also looks like he's proud about cheating on me. But he won't keep away from me. If you read everything, thank you, I really appreciate it. Story: Finding Strength in Solitude. In the bustling city of Seattle lived a man named Daniel. At 33, Daniel was a successful architect known for his innovative designs and attention to detail. He lived in a stylish apartment downtown and enjoyed a life filled with friends, hobbies, and adventures. Despite his fulfilling life, there was one question that seemed to follow him everywhere: why are you still single? Daniel had been in a few serious relationships over the years, but none had worked out. His friends were mostly married or in long-term relationships, and family gatherings often involved subtle, and not so subtle, comments about his single status. While these remarks stung, Daniel was determined not to let them define his happiness. One rainy afternoon, Daniel decided to take a break from his hectic schedule and visit a small, cozy cafe he had recently discovered. As he sipped his coffee and watched the raindrops race down the window, he reflected on his life. He realized that he had always been someone who found joy in solitude and personal growth. He decided to embrace his single life and focus on the things that made him happy. Daniel started by making a list of personal goals and adventures he wanted to embark on. At the top of his list was a solo trip to Iceland, a place he had always dreamed of visiting. A month later, Daniel found himself standing on the black sand beaches of Vik, feeling the cool Atlantic breeze against his face. The breathtaking landscapes, with their glaciers, waterfalls, and volcanic formations, filled him with a sense of awe and wonder. During his travels, Daniel met other solo adventurers from around the world. He bonded with a fellow traveler named Sophie, who was also exploring Iceland on her own. They shared stories of their journeys and dreams, forming a friendship that enriched their experiences. Sophie admired Daniel's courage to travel alone and pursue his passions, and their conversations helped Daniel see the beauty in his solitary path. Back in Seattle, Daniel returned to his routine with a renewed sense of purpose. He threw himself into his work, taking on challenging projects that pushed the boundaries of his creativity. He also took up photography, capturing the city's architectural marvels and natural beauty through his lens. His photos garnered attention, and he was invited to exhibit his work at a local gallery. One evening, while attending the opening of his photo exhibition, Daniel ran into an old college friend, Kevin. They hadn't seen each other in years and quickly fell into an easy conversation. Kevin was intrigued by Daniel's stories of solo travel and personal growth. They exchanged numbers and began meeting up for coffee and hikes, enjoying each other's company without any pressure or expectations. As months passed, Daniel's life continued to flourish. He found joy in his solitude and fulfillment in his pursuits. He and Kevin grew closer, and their friendship deepened into something more. Daniel appreciated that their relationship was built on mutual respect and understanding, allowing both of them to maintain their independence while sharing their lives. One day, as they stood on a hilltop overlooking the city, Kevin turned to Daniel and said, "Daniel, being with you feels like an adventure. I admire your strength and the way you've embraced your life. I'm glad we reconnected." Daniel smiled, feeling a sense of contentment and clarity. "Thank you, Kevin. I'm glad too. But remember, our happiness comes from within. We're choosing to share our journeys, not complete them." In the end, Daniel's story was not about finding love in the traditional sense, but about discovering and embracing himself. He had learned that being single at 30 was not a state of lack, but a canvas for creating a fulfilling and meaningful existence. His journey was a testament to the power of self-love, independence, and the endless possibilities that lay ahead when one embraces life wholeheartedly. Story: Redefining Singlehood. In the vibrant city of San Francisco, lived a man named David. At 29, David was a successful software developer, known for his innovative solutions and dedication to his work. He had a stylish apartment in the heart of the city, a close-knit group of friends, and a plethora of hobbies that kept him busy. Despite his fulfilling life, David often found himself at the center of discussions about his single status. One evening, during a family gathering, David's aunt leaned over and asked, "David, you're such a catch. Why are you still single?" David smiled politely, hiding his frustration. "I'm happy with my life right now. Being single allows me to focus on my career and passions." The question lingered in David's mind long after the gathering. It seemed society viewed being single as a problem that needed solving, but David saw it differently. He decided to explore and articulate why being single was not only okay, but also a fulfilling choice. David had always valued his independence. Being single allowed him to make decisions without having to consider a partner's needs or preferences. He could travel spontaneously, take on new challenges at work, and spend his free time however he chose. This freedom enabled him to grow personally and professionally. "Remember when I decided to backpack through Europe last summer?" David said to his friends during a casual get-together. "I booked the tickets the week before and left without any second thoughts. Being single gave me that freedom." David cherished his friendships deeply. He had a diverse group of friends who shared his interests and supported him through thick and thin. Being single allowed him to invest time and energy into these relationships, creating a strong support network. "I have time to help my friends move, celebrate their successes, and support them during tough times," David explained. These friendships are incredibly meaningful and fulfilling. David had a wide range of interests, from rock climbing to playing the guitar to coding side projects. Being single gave him the time and space to explore these hobbies fully. He joined a rock climbing gym, started a local band with friends, and developed an app that he had been passionate about for years. "I love the freedom to dive into my passions without feeling guilty about neglecting a partner," David said. Growing up, David had seen the financial struggles his parents faced and learned the importance of financial independence. Being single gave him control over his finances, allowing him to save, invest, and spend as he saw fit. He enjoyed the freedom of making his own financial decisions and planning for his future. "I've been able to save for my dream of buying a house in the city," David shared. "And I don't have to consult anyone else about it." For David, happiness and success were not defined by a relationship status. He found joy in his accomplishments, his friendships, and his personal growth. He believed that being single allowed him to live authentically and pursue his true passions without external pressures. Happiness isn't about fitting into someone else's expectations, David said. It's about living a life that feels right for me. As David shared his insights with his friends and family, they began to see his perspective. They realized that his choice to remain single was not out of necessity, but out of a desire to live a fulfilling and independent life. David's story serves as a reminder that being single is not a problem to be fixed, but a valid and fulfilling choice. It's an opportunity to grow, pursue passions, and build meaningful relationships on one's own terms. David's journey of embracing singlehood is a testament to the power of self-love, independence, and the endless possibilities that lie ahead when one chooses to live authentically. For David, and many like him, singlehood is not a state of lack but a canvas for creating a rich and meaningful life. Story: weirdest relationship I've ever had. A few days ago, my relationship came to an end. It was only 3 months long, but the whole thing was a wild roller coaster of unbelievable and unpredictable events. Looking back, I feel like a gullible idiot and don't blame anyone for feeling the same towards me. But to my defense, a lot of the details pressured me into trusting and staying in the relationship. I am not new to relationships and never had an issue getting girls, but right before I started this roller coaster, I was in a 2-year relationship that I ended because I just realized we were not really compatible due to not sharing any hobbies and a decent language barrier. I felt terrible for hurting her, but after having 5 months to improve myself and really think about what I wanted in a relationship, I felt ready to date again. I got on the Hinge dating app and quickly got into the groove of flirting, talking to girls again. I, 27 was not interested in hookups and was only searching for potential relationships. I eventually picked the girl I ended up dating, 27F. Her sexuality was labeled pansexual, which kind of threw me off, but after some research, it just seemed like being a picky bisexual. Not a big deal. Our conversations were surprisingly fun and unlike any girl before. She had a good sense of humor and seemed to be down to earth, sharing the same morals and boundaries I had. She was not much my type physically, but her personality made me really attracted to her. After a few days, we talked on the phone for hours, and she eventually tells me she has only been on one date in her life and has never had a boyfriend, and obviously the things that come with it like virginity and so on. Understandably, I am quite skeptical and find it weird, but all I can do is keep an eye out for signs of lying. I would usually move on respectfully after hearing this because it is a lot of pressure, and if things don't work out, you'll feel terrible. But we clicked so well, and I really felt like I found the match I never had before. We talked for about another 2 weeks before meeting. During this time she tells me she would like me to know something about her before moving on. She has been diagnosed with BPD, borderline personality disorder. I ask her what that all entails, and she describes it as when she gets mad about something she can get extremely mad. It sounds scary, but from so many stories she has told me, it seems like she honestly doesn't get mad enough to be honest. Such as forgiving people immediately for doing terrible things like totaling her car or scamming her. With this in mind, I don't make it a big deal, but again, keeping an eye out for those symptoms. Scheduling to meet was hard because she works 6 days a week and gets off late. We planned to meet at a 24-hour restaurant to sit in a car and talk, but last minute she decided to just come over to my place. This is a little strange for a first date that's not a hookup, but I assume she feels safe because I am in a wheelchair. She comes over, and we have a great time talking until 4 a.m. and she leaves. The next day she is saying how much fun she had and is surprised I didn't try to make a move on her. I explained that since she is a virgin and all, that would be really inappropriate for me, not to mention she worked all day and went to the gym before coming over. Gross. She said it was really respectful, but if I would have tried to, she would have probably had sex. I feel really weird considering the bizarre nature of a virgin of 27 years willing to give it up so quickly. I begin not to believe her obviously. She tells me that it's just because she is tired of not knowing that part of life and just wants to rip the band-aid off. I ask why she is a virgin in the first place and explains an extremely traumatic event that happened to her as a child. I try to be understandable, and it does seem logical, so I continue with her. I tell her to really make sure that's what she wants, and we can go ahead and do it. So the next day, we do. She definitely acted like a virgin considering how awkward and unnatural it felt despite my best efforts to make things comfortable and straightforward. Right after sex, she says we should get matching tattoos, something with names. Dumbfounded, I tell her how insane it is to even think about that, and I would never get anyone's name on me. She insists that she would never regret it even if things did end badly. I try to explain why it's crazy, but drop it, chalking it up to just losing her virginity and emotions are high. She then asks if I want to hear something crazy. Sure. She said that she wanted to get a surgery to have a grafted penis attached to her body above her vagina. Not joking. I try to stay calm and just ask questions because for me, and probably the world, this is insane. She might have picked up my concern because when I ask when she wanted this, she says as a kid, and she knows it is a crazy thought. I feel relieved, and it probably made the tattoo thing seem so insignificant it was out of my head. Fast forward a month, and we are in a full-on relationship. No other weird things happened during this time. But one night she is drinking, she shares a story with me. She's getting emotional explaining how a long time ago her cousin was telling her about a new surgery that could give her an almost fully functioning penis, but it turned out to be a lie. She then says that it is something she always wanted and will always want. I get pretty heated in the moment, questioning why she said it was not something she wanted only a month ago. She tries to say that is how she felt in the moment when I asked her initially. I explain how it makes no sense, and eventually she says she was embarrassed. She then gets defensive and says she thought if you loved someone it shouldn't matter. I tell her I don't live in a fairy tale, and I ignore 99.9% of people would stay after something like that. Just so it's clear, I am not talking about being transgender, I am talking about having a Frankenstein penis made from random parts of your body. I explain how it would not feel or function like a penis whatsoever, and at that point, you are just insane. She then tries to argue about how it is probably possible to do that, and I explain how complicated nerves and technology isn't even good enough to fix nerves for a broken back like mine. I tell her if she plans on doing this, she will have to find someone else that is okay with it. She explains that she wouldn't do anything that her partner wouldn't like, so if we are together, it will never happen. Looking back, I am embarrassed I did not leave because obviously she has some serious issues, but I was trying to not be judgmental considering I have told her so many things about me and she gave me the same curiosity. After that night, I kinda blocked it out of my head and pretended it never happened. I would be happy as long as it never came up. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.